I thought I liked investment banking, but turns out I didn't like it. It's advising our client on the real estate projects. So it's real estate classes are technically finance classes, just more focused on real estate. Especially that I like seeing what I'm working on. Right?
Yeah.
Some say maybe it's the end when you keep the final graph. So there's no implementation, but it's a lot of advising them on whatever they want to achieve within the real estate project.
So now the need is not the same. It's not having a space to work, which is everyone have at home, but the need is to have somewhere to work that is attractive.
Like my dad always used to say, if you stop learning, you die.
You have to talk to people not only for connection, but also, as you said, to know what you like.
So if you do that from your first semester, by your fourth year, when you're close to graduating, you have an idea of what you like and you don't like. Right?
Yeah.
Your major doesn't define like the career path that you want to do.
Finance. There's so many different industries, and I feel with the background finance, you could have done any of the 10 past interviews I've recorded in this podcast.
Big titles, big roles, but what do they actually mean? I'm Ines Hiraki, and this is From Wall Street to Main Street, breaking down business jobs, one conversation at a time.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of From Wall Street to Main Street. Today we have the honor of having Chafic Abou Ghazaly, who's a consultant in real estate advisory at Deloitte. Hello Chafic, how are you today?
Hi Ines, how are you?
I'm great, thank you for asking. Thank you for being here as well.
Thank you for having me.
We're very excited to discover a little bit about real estate advisory. I'm wondering, when you were a kid, did you wanted to work in real estate, or what was the dream job that you wanted to do, and did you expect to end up in real estate advisory?
Definitely not. I want to play sports. I want to be a soccer player, basketball
No way.
player. So
The first episode, that's the exact same sentence the guest gave us. So a lot of soccer players we could have here.
I guess it never worked to anyone, right? So it's hard. It's hard, especially coming from Lebanon. It's sports is a big thing, but it's not something you do when you grow up. I would say it's not much different from what I'm doing now, because it's, how can I say, you need a lot of momentum in my work. So it's not a sprint. It's a marathon type of thing. So you need to be able to sustain the work that we do, and it's not like you do it once and then the next day it's done. It's projects, it's long projects sometimes. So I would say it's kind of the same thing as being a sports player where you have to run for long hours. That's probably the same thing, except we're not running, but sitting at a desk.
Yeah. And so you wanted to be a soccer player at first. You ended up going to Concordia University, major in finance, minor in real estate. So how did you end up in that path? And tell us a little bit about that.
So I always wanted to do a major in finance. My dad is a business owner. My mom worked in a bank for a while. She did econ in university. So I always got this, side of things, business, econ, finance. I was like, okay, finance is not too bad. The real estate part is kind of the one that I kind of figured out when I was in university. So
you didn't sign up with the real estate major?
no,
Okay.
no, I started just as a finance. So before that, I did another major, but finance, let's say for now. It's kind of like I went into finance, started my classes, and then after that, I went to a association event. It's called, the association is called Concordia Real Estate Club. Shout out, right? So they had an event where they got speakers, from real estate companies, and this is where I was like, oh, real estate is not bad. There's something I can do within real estate, right? So after that, I was like, oh, there's a minor in real estate, and then when I looked even further, I saw that real estate classes are technically finance classes, just more focused on real estate. So I was like, okay, instead of just doing a bachelor's in finance, I'll add the real estate minor and kind of just go with it, right? I went with it, it was nice to have like a plus instead of just doing electives, and so I love it.
Okay, so when you discovered the real estate area, why didn't you go to work in real estate, like not real estate valuation, but like selling houses? Was that something you were interested in, or why did you ended up in real estate advisory, for example?
So I never wanted to be a broker. Being a broker is really nice, but it was not like the career path that I wanted for myself. I always liked solving problems, I would say, or advising people on like their, not problems, but their projects. So this is kind of how like I went into the advisory part. Also graduating in finance and minor in real estate, it's kind of like could have went into banking, could have went into other like consulting roles, as maybe within ERP, finance transformation. It could have been anything, right? Also, your major doesn't define like the path or career path that you want to do. And obviously I had the real estate interest and the
Mhm.
real estate minor, so like it kind of helped me with like the language of things. I could understand more when I'm talking to someone and we're talking real estate. So graduating in 2024, not too long ago, I was like, okay, what do I want to do, right? So I tried everywhere, to be fair with you, because I had a lot of interest. And I ended up with at Deloitte, real estate advisory. I spoke to a couple of people there before, and they had an opening, and this is about it.
And were there any key moments, like in your academic path or your professional path, that let you know that you wanted to do that?
Like I said, the CREC for sure. The
club,
the
yeah.
club was definitely a big thing. The professors at Concordia within the real estate department also they kind of like made me love real estate
They
more.
give you some advice about the
Well,
industry.
yes,
Yeah.
because we're studying the real estate. It is finance, but like there's a real estate component. It's a real estate component, so it it kind of like I was like, oh wow, so I'm using my finance knowledge from like everything that I've learned in university, but now I'm doing real estate classes. So it's like
Yeah, it's
wow,
applicable to
yeah,
something. Yeah.
exactly. So it was applicable to something. Um, like I said, the professors also like most of them come from a real estate background. So I had one of them that used to work in real estate before joining Concordia as a professor.
Mhm.
There's another
As a broker or not?
no, he used to work in Audit
Okay.
Capital. It's at the moment I think it's the what is called the CDPQ. So you have CDPQ,
Mhm.
and now you have the real estate department.
They have an infrastructure department.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
before, I'm not sure because this is like I'm talking a long time ago. They were called Otera Capital,
Okay. Okay.
which was the real estate arm of CDPQ.
Okay.
So they kind of did the restructuring. It's a bit, before I came to Canada, so I'm not sure how it
Yeah.
was before, but that's how
Okay.
I know from them. And I have another professor who also was like he works somewhere else. He's if I'm not mistaken, a director in economic infrastructure real estate advisory.
Mhm.
And he's part-time at GMSB. So it's kind of like it was nice to have these classes,
Mhm.
but also given from people that are in the field or
Yeah.
used to be in the field, so it makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it was a nice mix of finance and real estate.
Yeah.
Especially that I like seeing what I'm working on, right?
Yeah.
So it is a lot of numbers, but at least it's real estate. So like
Yeah.
if I'm working towards the numbers of let's say a project,
Mhm.
I know what the project is like.
Yeah, it's
I
not
can go
like
see it.
yeah, it's not like finance or like the market
Yes.
where it's like just on the computer you can
Exactly.
see numbers and everything. It's actually a building, so you can see the value. Like when you see a stock, for example, its value is this number. You don't really see the stock with your eyes, but a building, like you can see actually. So its value is this number, so it's more tangible and you can really touch it. So it makes sense. Can you tell us maybe what is real estate advisory in very simple terms, so we can kind of understand this industry?
So in short, it's advising our client on the real estate project. So it's like the easy kind of definition. If we go more deep into it, it's the clients or any individual or company, they have real estate projects. We come in, we're like, okay, what do you need help with? And then we advise them.
Okay.
It can go from valuation, it can go from strategic advisory, it could be anything because
Okay.
it's real estate. So there's no implementation like other, let's say, management consulting teams, but it's a lot of, back and forth with the client and advising them on whatever they want to achieve within their real estate projects.
So what kind of services does the real estate advisory team offer, and who are your typical clients?
So we offer multiple services. There's the valuation part, obviously. We also support our audit clients when it comes to, we call it audit support. So we support the audit teams when it comes to the audit season.
So for example, there's a company that want to get audited, they get audited by the audit team, and on their statement, they want to value a property that they have, they will send it to the real estate team to
Yes. So it's basically like the client gets audited by our audit teams at Deloitte. But then the Deloitte teams, the audit teams, technically, they come to us and be like, okay, can you validate these reports, these values?
Is it the true value?
Does it make sense? Does it, is it within like market benchmarks? We look at the rents, we look at the grades, does it make sense for us to take these values and put them in our books so we can, go on with the audit, what's it called, audit work. So this is where we're not doing valuations, but we're
Validating.
validating the external valuation of the audit client, you know.
And so who are your typical clients in this type of mandates?
So it could be anyone. It could be individuals, it could be companies. When it comes to the audit part, REITs, you know, so it could be anyone with real estate projects, right?
Okay.
Because these days, you know, anyone has real estate projects, you know, real estate ideas they want to do, problems if they have problems. So it could be anyone that that is open to it. Yeah.
Does it happen sometimes to go see the property of the client, go make some inspection or see how it looks in real life?
Yeah. So sometimes when we do evaluation project, if it's within the scope of work to go and do a site inspection or a site visit, we do, especially when it's out of the ordinary type of asset, you know. It's definitely part of the scope if the client wishes us to do so, and if we see the need to go and do a site inspection, for sure, it will happen.
Okay. And do you define your work as being more front office, back office, a mix of both, and how it differs in terms of mandates and type of project? Does it differ in between projects?
So I would say it's a bit of both. Front office when it's more on the evaluation, you know, advising our clients, right? So we have to talk to them, see the scope, try to understand what they're looking for, you know, show them our draft numbers or draft like reports, PowerPoints, you know, just to show them how the work is coming along. A bit more back office when it comes to helping our audit teams, right? Because we're looking at the numbers of the financials, right? So we just look at them, write a small report, do some just reports. We show them to the audit teams, you know, and if all is good, all is good. Takes more a bit front office with the audit team if we need to go and speak to the client or the valuation, like whoever wrote the report of the valuation.
Okay. And so when you're evaluating a property, do you base yourself mostly on data or sometimes you use your judgment as well? Or is it a mix of both?
When doing valuations?
Yes.
I would say data for sure, market data, right? So like it only makes sense if you want to simplify it. You want to buy a condo. We don't do condos, but I'm just saying if anyone wants to buy a condo, it only makes sense for you to look at condos that were already sold in the same building within the last, let's say, a year or two, for you to see how the market is kind of going. Is it like good price for you to buy, or is it a bad price? Is it more expensive that the last couple of condos that were sold, or is it less expensive, right? So it only makes sense. So we do rely a lot of like market reports, research from the market, you know, stuff like that. Yeah.
So typically when clients come to you to do evaluation, it means that okay, so it's a client of the company. They had an offer to buy a building and they come to you to see if the offer is valid or not, if it's worth more, if it's worth less, if they should negotiate, and to kind of evaluate the offer. Is that the typical type of project or is there other type of
Sometimes yes. Sometimes they come to us and be like, okay, we got an offer. Is this a good one? And then we kind of do evaluation. But most of the time they just need, you know, a number on their asset, you know, just to have a valuation of the value on the asset that they have, right? It could be for anything. It could be for them to sell it later, you know. It could be for them just to put them in their box, just to have an idea. It could be for anything.
Okay, so for example, when you do the audit report, basically you validate the value that the company put in their statement, right? But when you do advisory, you can provide a value to, for example, a client that they put in their statement, and then they will get audited, for example, from another firm, and this other firm gonna send this valuation to their real estate team to get a value to see if your valuation was great. Will it?
What happens on the client side is whatever they want to do, right? But for us, they come to us and they're like, okay, we want a value. Can you put a value? I have this piece of land. I have this industrial building, this office building. Like, what is it? What is it worth? You know, kind of thing, right? It could be within a project, right? It could be we're doing a valuation because let's say our business valuation team is doing a business valuation, right? And within the business, they have real estate assets. So our business valuation team will, you know, work on the valuation of the business. We do the real estate valuation and then they put it together and then you have a nice number at the end. Sometimes we also do it with our PPE team, which is machinery and equipment. So let's say they want to do a value on industrial property, right? So in the industrial property or in the warehouse or wherever you want to call it, there's machinery. So there's a value to this machine, right? Obviously, it's not for free, right? So now you have the business valuation doing evaluation for the whole business. You have the machinery doing valuation for the machinery and
Yeah.
equipment, and then you have us doing, let's say, for the land and the warehouse or the industrial
Okay.
building that is on it, and then you kind of all put it together, and then you have a nice big value at the end.
Okay, that's nice. And let's say we dive more into the technicalities. So doing the valuation, suppose you also use a DCF, so discounted cash flow. Does it differ from the one we use in finance, and what would be the difference?
Yeah, I would say it's a bit different. Yeah. So the DCF when it comes to real estate, so instead of having just revenues and then you list your revenues in real estate, it's like, let's say we're talking residential revenue, a nice building with commercial, let's say on the bottom, you have the residential revenue from the rental income, you have the commercial revenue from the retail spaces that are like under the building, you have the locker revenues, you have, let's say, if there's any sort of services in the building, it's also a revenue.
Okay.
Then you have the expensive, you have the expenses, sorry, you have the capex, you have the, let's say the management fees, because people pay management fees, so that's like under the revenue. Sometimes they need to fix something within the building, maybe in one specific apartment. So there's all types of revenues, all sorts of types of expenses as well. And then in the end, you have a nice NOI, just like any other DCF.
Okay.
So you can see it, going through the years.
And is the DCF the main approach to value a company, or do you also use other methods like comparables? And what is the main use?
Yeah, so in real estate, you have the DCF, discounted cash flow. You have the income approach, which is the direct cap, and then you have the market comparison approach, which is basically market. So when it comes to comparison approach, like I said before, you're just comparing what is similar. That's why whatever you get from the market is called comparables, right? So you have your subject A, you have comparable A, B, C, D. You kind of see how similar they are.
So you mentioned the income approach. Can you tell us a little bit more about that one?
So the income approach is it's for income producing properties. So it ends with a NOI, and then usually you get the value of the property by dividing the NOI by a cap rate. And to get the cap rate, you look at, market benchmark, and you kind of decide what cap rate you want to use, because every cap rate is different for each properties, industrial, office, residential, retail, whatever.
Okay. And could you, for example, walk us through the process when you receive a client request? So kind of like an algorithm, what is the first thing that you do? What is the first thing that you check? And like how long it takes from start to finish to go all of these steps?
Yeah, so when I start working on a project or a mandate for a client, obviously there's a lot of back and forth with the client to understand what are their needs. After that, we wait for the client's information, because for us to start our valuation or any advisory project, we need to have some sort of information for the client, like lot numbers, past valuations, municipal value. Sometimes we can get it ourselves. Like everything that the client or that we deem that we need for the mandate, we'll ask them. Sometimes we do like a big chunk of documents in the beginning, and then au fur et à mesure in French, we start getting more documents as we see fit. When we get all the documents, this is when like we can start with the work. We do the work, obviously, whatever the scope is, and you have to keep the stakeholder or the client like engaged. So every time we have some sort of draft, we show them, tell them what our, like, let's say our what's it called? Like our rationale is to get this number or in this range. We see what their input are, maybe see if we need more document information or more information that could skew our findings or the report or the valuation or any sort of conclusion that we get to the end. And then when everything is said and done, we have our final draft that we can show to the client.
Okay. And how long all of these steps take?
So it depends. It depends on how big the project, how big the mandate, how big the scope of the work is. Sometimes it could take 2 weeks, sometimes it could take more. It all depends also on the asset itself. Some of them are kind of easier than others. Let's say something in the Montreal area is easy to do, not because it's an easy project, just because we have more information, I'd say. But if it's something, let's say, really up north in Quebec, where there's not many like market transactions, comparables, anything of that, like in terms of market research and benchmark, it's a bit harder to get information. Also, it will be a bit, longer, a bit harder for us to get to a final draft, But obviously, it's doable. Just it takes a bit more time, to be more precise.
And which one is your favorite step among all the steps from the algorithm?
Some say maybe it's the end when you get the final draft, but I say like all the steps are pretty nice, because first thing when you meet the client and you get to the scope of work, it's really nice because you get to meet, someone new. And then the planning part is also like very important because you need to plan accordingly, which is also really nice because you get to know at least, how you're gonna work and what is the scope of work. So you can start planning by yourself how you want to move with the mandate, and when we get a bit towards the end, we, meet internal meetings, meetings with the client to show them what we have in terms of draft, some adjustments here and there. And obviously at the end it's nice when the client is happy with the with our work, and this is what we do.
Is there any type of certification that are not required but more like valuable working in this field?
So when we say certification, I'm going to include with it any sort of masters, MBA, PhDs. Obviously, we all know that they are very important for someone's like education and parkour. In terms of real estate, having maybe DCF knowledge, DCF classes, Excel, PowerPoint, Word for report writing and stuff. When it comes to valuations, we have the ASCI, which comes from the Appraisal Institute of Canada, which is basically you're eligible to design on valuation. So let's say you go and do a valuation for any sort of asset, let's say industrial, commercial, retail, residential building, and you have a report to do it. You have to sign it, and for you to sign it, you have to have the ACI.
And when you're doing evaluation, is there any specific like green flags or red flags that you're looking for?
So I wouldn't call it green flags or red flags. It's kind of, it always depends on the asset that we're looking at. When it comes to industrial, let's say, we look at the ratio of the building to the land, right? Because you need trucks that go in the back, right? So do they have a tight space or a big space for them to maneuver their truck so they can go into the loading docks? Now we're talking about loading docks. The more loading docks, the more you can get trucks, the more attractive it is. One industrial property with 2 loading docks is less attractive than an industrial property with 20 or 30 of them.
And this affects the value as well.
Exactly, because it's more attractive for someone. So if you put your investment hat, right? Do you want 2 trucks to come to your industrial asset or industrial subject, or you want 20? Obviously 20 makes more traffic, right? So you also have the height, the ceiling height. So more it's if it's like higher, it's more attractive because you can fit more containers or more
Storage.
good storage. Yes, exactly. So usually 23 to 30 is a nice range. Shorter than that, then it's shorter. So it always depends on whatever the client that is buying, if it's investment, or the tenant that wants to rent within that warehouse or that industrial part of things is like, what do they need?
And talking of attractiveness, is there any classification in real estate advisory that you make of buildings in terms of not only attractiveness but maybe other criteria?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to all the real estate assets, for example, you have office, you have downtown offices, you have midtown offices, you have suburban, and then you classify them into class triple A, class double A, class A,
Like
class
in
B,
finance?
class C. Yeah, exactly like finance, but it's more of a let's say a very nice building downtown, high rise, relatively new construction. The finishes are new, everything is new. This is considered class AAA. If it's a bit less, then it's considered class AA. If it's less, then class A. If it's less, it goes down and down. Maybe all old office buildings, let's say in suburban of Montreal or like any city. If it's old, let's say built in 1990s, maybe 1950s, whatever it is, maybe it's a class C or class B. It depends on. It's kind of, in a langage courant, when you look at a building, you're like, oh, this is a nice building, right? It's new. If you want to go more into real estate, language, we call it class AAA, class AA, right? If it's old, then you'll say it's old, but someone in real estate will say, oh, maybe it's class B or class C, right? Same thing applies for industrial. You have multi-tenant industrial, you have single-tenant industrial, right? So a single tenant is one industrial building that is like only for one tenant. You have multi-tenant, then I guess the warehouse is divided into smaller, let's say, tenancy for whoever tenant is occupying the space, you know.
Does, for example, the location based on transportation, like is it close to a metro station, these kind of things affect the classification as well?
Yes, definitely.
Like, for example, a building that is located with the metro station, like downstairs the building, or a building that is like maybe a 10-minute walk.
I wouldn't say it affects the classification, you know, because the classification is more of a like, is it new? Is it old?
okay.
Is it, you know, but definitely location plays a role, you know. I'm assuming you're speaking about industrial assets. So if it's industrial, obviously if the industrial building or asset is next to a port or next to an airport, right, or next to a highway, obviously is more attractive than an industrial building that is like in the middle of nowhere, where the closest port is an hour away, the airport is 30 minutes away, you know, it's not close to an exit or a highway, you know, so it plays a role. Location definitely plays a role.
So then when you take all these inputs into consideration, you come to a final nice little price or the value of the property. How does this price is different from the price that the broker offer their clients when they make them visits?
So you have something called BOV, which is broker opinion value, and then you have the real valuation that you need, you know, to have the ACI and everything that comes with it for you to sign and put the actual value on it. So the BOV from the broker's perspective is just the broker's opinion of value, right? It's just his opinion of how it should be, how much it should be.
And how does he base himself?
So usually from experience,
Okay.
you know, he obviously a broker is very experienced. He would, you know, look around. So when he would come into the specific building, he would say, okay, you know what, from experience, location, the attributes I'm seeing, I can say maybe we'll try to be around $1 million, right? While the valuation is you go more into details, right? You look at, you have the method of valuation that we spoke about, income, DCF, and comparison that you need to use, you know, to come to a value. And then you will come to a final value, you know, adding also the market, you know, the location. So it's a report, a heavy report of like 40, 50 pages where you have a value and a signature at the end. While the broker's one is more of his opinion from experience.
Okay, and usually do you see a gap in between the two?
I don't really look at BOV a lot, the broker's opinion value. If we have it, you know, maybe we'll look at it and see like,
Is that taken into consideration when doing the valuation?
no,
Never.
no.
Okay.
Mm.
And so,
At least not the ones that I did.
okay.
So, but no, I don't think so.
So you worked on many projects, I suppose, in real estate advisory. Is there a specific one that was very memorable for you and that like challenged you technically or professionally?
Look, every project is different, and that is what I like, you know, and that is why it's nice as well. So it's not well, it is repetitive sometimes because the method we use and everything we look at, but because the projects are different and they are for different purposes, the scope of work always changes, right? So I kind of like all the projects that I've worked on, honestly, because they're all different again. But it's nice to have a site inspection or a site visit just
Okay.
because I get to see what I will be working on, right?
Okay.
So it's always nice to have that sense of like human connection, especially because we meet the client at their site if we need to do a site inspection. And it's nice to go and look, right? So instead of doing, let's say, market research behind my computer, if I go to the site, I can have a look around, try to understand the surroundings. It's always nice to have that site inspection within the project.
And has ever happened, for example, that in a project the valuation is really different than what you had as an expectation?
Yeah, so definitely. So sometimes I would have a idea of how the market is going, you know, for a specific asset class, let's say office, industrial, residential, and then while working on the mandate that I am working on, I see that it's like, okay, so what I thought is not what is happening in the market, you know, and kind of adjust, right? So yes, sometimes, yeah, especially that we work with, you know, a lot of different asset classes and the market moves fast. Yeah, it happens for me to sometimes think that, oh, this asset class is doing great. And then you realize that it's not doing so great, let's say, you know. So yeah, it happens.
And then do you have a specific example of something that you thought about an industry and it turns out to be different?
Yeah, when I first joined when I first started my current role, I was looking at industrial property, right? And I realized that industrial market was doing okay at some point, but then it really boomed during COVID, right? So COVID, we're speaking, everyone's at home, supply chain increase, everything that you're ordering for your house, you're ordering online because you cannot go to the physical store, right? So there was a lot of demand for industrial properties, right? So when I was looking at the market, asking rent for industrial properties in Montreal, I saw a spike at some point within the COVID years, right? And I was speaking with my manager, it's like, what happened in like a year or two? Like it just jumped. It's like, yeah, COVID happened. Everyone stayed at home. A lot of people needed the space for their goods, and they needed warehouses, industrial asset class, everything that comes within the warehouse family. And obviously, price will go up when there's a high demand for it, right? So I was really surprised, especially that it was a nice peak. But then while within the last couple of years that I've worked with industrial, I've seen like kind of a stable,
Okay.
rent.
As you mentioned earlier, sometime doing like site inspection and being able to visit a building, was there ever a specific site inspection that stood out to you and you noticed something really different?
Yeah, so we did once a site inspection for kind of a hospitality, which is like kind of a hotel that is really old and outside of Montreal. This was nice because not your typical looking at the office, looking at something commercial, looking at luxury. So it was a bit different and it was a bit old, So I got to see kind of like had a history lesson of like, so I was looking around, you see portraits, you're speaking to the clients, like all of this king brought this hotel, and then gave it to his son, and his son, fought in this war and then lost the castle, So it's kind of nice when it's different than your usual asset classes.
Does the history of a building or like the sentimental value affects the value of the building as well sometimes?
I'm not sure, but it can play a role to whoever is buying it, right?
Yeah.
Because would you pay more for something that has a meaning and then more historical?
For some people, yes.
Exactly. So this is more on the broker level, I would say, but in the value,
That's
I don't think
yeah.
it will budge any sort of numbers anywhere. But when it comes to someone buying something that comes from historical times, and that has been passed on from kings to queens
Yeah.
to the family, maybe.
Okay. Okay. And so, for example, how does the interest rate and supply chain disruption could affect the value of a property?
I would say anything in the market can kind of like move the market around. We go back to COVID because it's the easiest thing. A lot of people stayed home. Offices are empty, so everyone's doing remote work, right? So a lot of people were like, "Oh, I don't want to buy an office building," because everyone's everyone's at home, right? And you never know when you're coming back. Because back in time, we thought COVID was gonna be the next big thing, and it's gonna be this huge thing, right? So some people stopped buying offices, but a lot of people doubled down, right? They were like, kind of took a risk and they're like, okay, eventually COVID's going to go away. If I buy a lot of office spaces now, eventually when everything comes back to normal, it's going to be income producing properties and it's going to be great for the business, for me, for whatever. So anything in the market can affect real estate, definitely.
And so, for example, do you notice? So, COVID happened, people started working from home a lot, so there is less people in the office. But since we came back from COVID, we don't have 5 days a day of
Yeah.
like people, a lot are still working from home. So, do you feel like we reached back where we were before COVID, or is it still not the same? Because people are still not always at the office.
I think it's getting there. I think we're seeing more and more people going back to the office for sure. But the thing is also you have to accommodate, right? So some smaller companies that were in 2020, let's say they were 500 employee at the company. 6 years later, now 2026, they have double that amount, but their office space staying the same, right? So how can the people that just came in now are going to sit in an office that doesn't fit anyone, so we're seeing that problem with like smaller companies, for the office spaces, but we're also seeing a lot of companies telling their employees to come back to the office, right? But also what I've seen is that new offices that have better amenities, better finishes, a nice working place, um, are more attractive to people than, let's say, the class B or the class C, right? So a nice office building in downtown, you can find nice conference rooms,
Yeah.
nice common spaces, a cafeteria, maybe a
That's
coffee.
motivation for people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've seen some offices with ping pong table, foosball, what's it called, the ice hockey
Mhm.
thing. So this is more attractive uh, for whoever's buying office spaces, but also to attract tenants, right? So let's say someone's buying a triple class A office building, it has very nice amenities. It's easier to attract a tenant to lease this nice office than if you buy an older office building and you try to get in a tenant.
Yeah.
The tenant's gonna be like, okay, you know what? I prefer this, more amenities, it's nicer, location better than this that is like not really nice, not renovated, I would say. So I've seen that when doing a lot of market research and when looking at
So you notice a difference. So basically, before COVID, people had mandatory going to the office. There was no work from home culture. Then COVID came, working from home 100%. And then people to get back to work, they have to convince people to not work from home anymore. So they have to focus on AAA building. So it feels like the building that are, for example, double Bs or Cs, their value would have lowered even like during COVID and after COVID. So I feel from what I'm hearing that it didn't go back to normal.
Mhm.
Now there is more like disparities in the market, in the classification. So way more interest in AAA buildings that their price might have gone up
it's
higher than before COVID.
yeah.
But for the other buildings that are less attractive to motivate people to come back to work, their value couldn't have reached what was before COVID. What I feel is like the need change, like when you talk offer demand, before the need was just to have a space to work. Now that's no longer a need because people have their space at home. So even if you were building in the suburbs, people still need that space to work because even like their computer was there, the network was there, everything was there. But COVID came, now they took out the option of having the space to work at home. So now the need is not the same. It's not having a space to work, which is everyone had at home, but the need is to have somewhere to work that is attractive, which building the classified C or double B or thing like that don't answer this type of demand. This is where I feel like the demand shifted. Do you feel that in the
Yeah, so the thing is with office is that people realize that they can do that's what I think, at least they can do their jobs at home, right? So you're like, if I can do my job at home, I can do it in the office, right? No need for me to commute. I can stay at home, right? I live an hour away from the office, better for me to stay home. What benefit am I getting from going to the office, right? So of course there's a lot of benefits of seeing your clients and they come to the office. So yeah, the thing is with the work from home, work in the office, is that at some point after COVID, before COVID, everyone was working from home, during COVID, sorry. And then after COVID, office owners needed to attract tenants, right? So hence came the newer offices, more amenities, so they can incite people to come and work from the office, to bring more value than you already have by working together, it's kind of like a incentive to bring everyone back to the office, which we're seeing, by the way. Well, we've seen a lot of companies going back to the office, which is good for the employees, for the people that are working in the office, but also for the office market.
okay. And so for example, for students that are interested in real estate advisory, what could they start working on right now, like technically and personally in terms of skills?
So I would always say to connect with people. When real estate is a big field. You have multiple branches within real estate. So it's just a question of meet people from different branches of real estate, different markets, and kind of understand what they do, so you can pinpoint what you like, what you don't like, right? Some people prefer development. Some people want to be more into the investment side. So kind of depends. So I would say talk to everyone, get as much as information as you can from these professionals, so you know what you like and you don't like. In terms of more technical stuff, obviously the language, it's for you to understand what is a cap rate, what is a discount rate, stuff like this. Be more understanding of the market, right? So you need to understand the market, kind of to understand what is happening, so you know how to move forward. Attention to detail, right? So I know it's everyone uses attention to detail, but yeah, it is very true, especially when you're working with numbers and clients, and a lot of documents. You need to pay attention to detail so you don't miss one thing, right? So these are my advice.
Shafiq, the first time we talked, you told me you didn't have that much guidance during university. If you could go back or talk to yourself when you were at university, what would you have said to yourself?
So I didn't have guidance just because I'm a COVID graduate. So I graduated in 2024. So the thing is that from, I would say, 2019, 2020 till 2023, these were like the peak COVID times. So I didn't have much guidance just because I didn't go to classes in person. It was all online, right? So I didn't know of associations, clubs that were at my university. I didn't have much guidance, or like I didn't have the chance to meet advisors, or the career management services that we used to have at GMSB. So all of that came in 2023 when COVID started, to ease. We used to go back to classes and stuff. This is where I was like, oh, okay, so I need to meet people, I need to be involved in school. I need to speak with my advisors, to have a kind of a somewhat a set plan for after university. So instead of having 3 to 4 years to do that, I had my last year. This is where I got involved, associations at GMSB, spoke to all my advisors, kind of made new friends also because it was hard making
Yeah.
friends online, right? So just putting myself out there.
Yeah.
So I did it very aggressively for the last year just because I didn't have 3 or 4 years to do it.
Yeah.
So now when I'm speaking to students at networking events and I'm like, oh, do you graduate anytime soon? He's like, no, this is my first semester. And I'm like,
I wish I did that my first semester.
you're lucky
Yeah.
because you can do that on your first semester, and I wish I did that, but I couldn't because of COVID.
Yeah.
So being out there, speaking to people, getting a lot of information. So I always tell this to my friends and my brothers and sorry, and the people that I meet is like, speak to people just not so you can get a job, but so you can, get information so you know what you like. So if you do that from your first semester, by your fourth year, when you're close to graduating, you have an idea of what you like and you don't like, right?
Yeah.
I thought I liked investment banking, but turned out I didn't like it. And that came from me speaking to people and meeting people in that field. So it's just a question of gathering as much information as you can. And then eventually everything will fall into place.
I feel like I can really relate to that. Even though I didn't have the COVID years, I did as well. My first 2 years, I was not at all involved in networking events and clubs and anything. And not because of COVID, but because I'm from the science faculty, because my program falls under a mathematics department. So I wasn't close to any business school activities, and it was very far from me. And there was no clubs or association where you could kind of see the financial mathematics in our faculty. And so it's only at my third year that I started going to events, going to club, and I felt very late into that. And now, as I'm a VP in some clubs, and I see first year being so active, taking that much leadership, taking that much initiative, I'm like, oh my god, what are they gonna be in their fourth year? If I started like 2 or 3 years ago, I would have been way more far than I am today. But I'm thankful to where I am today. But I feel like a lot of time we forget, or sometimes when we go to university, especially I feel like for I don't know about you, but as international student, you're so focused on the I'm alone in a new country, in a new city. I have to figure everything out on my own. And yeah, you have club spirit and everything, but you don't really get to know and how important it is. You're here figuring out a career, some company. Like at first, I feel I discovered like the big fours, the big banks, and everything at my third year. Before that, you told me like Deloitte. I didn't know what that was. You told me GP Market. I don't know what that was as well. So it took me some time to get to know about this vague industry, and I felt like I wasted time. So I really relate to what you felt having to rush your last year, and I did it as well in my third year. I was like, okay, this year I'm gonna take my easiest class. Most of my programs like math and finance class, so I took all my finance class on my third year, and focused on the networking all year. So you can learn.
It's important to network,
Yeah.
definitely, because grades are very important as well. But if you're always at home studying, just for your exam, just to have a perfect GPA, but you don't meet people, you're kind of at a disadvantage. So
Yeah.
a nice mix of grades and meeting people is goes a long way, definitely. So my advice is connect, get to know about the different industries you're interested in. So it's how it works.
Especially in business, because first of all, that's a world of connection.
Yes.
In a way, like you have to talk to people, they need to kind of see potential in you to give you a chance, because everyone's applying, everyone sends their resume, but you have to. And the thing in business as well, and that was the main reason I started the podcast, is that you have to talk with people not only for connection, but also, as you said, to know what you're like. As you said as well, it's not because you graduated in finance that you're going to work in finance. There is no work in finance. There is so many different industries, and I feel with a background in finance, you could have done any of the 10 past interviews I've recorded in this podcast, but you have to talk to people to know which one and which path you want to go through. And they're so different from each other.
Yeah.
It's a completely different career. And when you go into finance, most of the people think investment banking, like you said. But then when you get to know what is investment banking, maybe it could be the good path for you, but maybe it can be real estate valuation, real estate advisory, maybe it could be something completely different. So getting to know like what are the careers, that's very important. And even talking with people, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you have to try it for yourself, have a couple of years experience in the industry, and then you notice, okay, I don't like this actually. But yeah, it would save some time at first you start talking to people.
Definitely. Because when you're studying, you're just studying, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you're learning, but you want to know also what the people in the real world are doing, right?
Yeah.
So I love my finance classes, right? But then I realized maybe I don't want to do investment banking. So my investment classes, they were interesting, but it's when you want to do it in the real world, it's not something that I like to do. So also nice to meet people, you never know. Everyone's interesting in their own way, right?
Yeah.
So meeting people is just meeting people.
Yeah. It also helps in class. For example, let's say you go to class, you study what is the GCF, you study all of that.
Exactly.
But you don't really know how it applies to the real world. So when you get to talk to people, and it happened to me a lot of times during an interview. For example, I was interviewing someone in quantitative investment, and he was telling me about how he does a regression analysis for his model. And I was like, oh, but I studied that in math. And being able to notice how this applies to the real world, even gives you more motivation to understand what you're studying in class, because
Now
sometimes
it makes sense.
it makes sense, and you see what is the value, because sometimes you learn so many things in class. I'm like,
Yeah.
where am I going to use a double integral?
Yes.
And like you don't really know, but
Yeah.
now that you see on the real world, it's like you with the real estate advisory, when you got to see like the property and the building, you see how your DCF and how your value take shapes.
And also you learn more when you get your hands dirty, right? That's why I always say, like, okay, learning is something and it's very important, but also it's kind of like when you're in the moment, you're thrown into a project or something. It's like you're learning as you go. So I've learned a lot during my work experience that I've learned at university. Obviously, it's really important for you to do that step from university to real life, but the work experience is very different. You learn a lot, especially when you're in there getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, and actually that's a really nice transition to the first audience question that we have. We have two of them right here that we selected, which is asking you how technical the job is getting on a daily basis. So do you get to learn on the job, like you said, or is it more you have to know everything before, and then you come and they give you everything?
So it was a bit easier for me because I had the language, because my minor is in real estate, so I kind of understand some of the words that were being thrown out. But definitely I've learned while working.
Yeah.
It's this is like a non-negotiable. I've learned while being in, I would say, the dungeon, where you fight, right? So it's you learn as you go, right? And I'm still learning. I kind of, like my dad always used to say, if you stop learning, you die.
That's a nice thing.
Yeah, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not curious about like new stuff, or you don't want to learn about what you're doing, about something that is currently going on, it's like, what's the point, right? So I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning, and obviously I'll continue on learning, till probably the end of my days. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Last question for today's episode, Shafiq. They're asking, does starting in real estate advisory give you optionality, or does it narrow your career path to really real estate? Or
Yeah, so real estate advisory, especially at at a big company, one of the big fours, you get to work on a lot of projects, and you get to learn, you get to work on with different clients, right, and different teams within the company, right. So if someone eventually wants to change careers, that's their option. But if they want to stay within real estate, it's nice that at the beginning of my career, or anyone's career, you get to work on different asset classes, different projects, so you know kind of what you like, what you don't like, and it kind of gives you that how you can call it, like that experience in everything, right? So if eventually you want to specialize in something, you have that experience as well, you know. So it's nice to be in a big four company and learning from different projects, definitely, and different teams, because you get the exposure, I would say, to different things, and that is what is nice about it. So it's not repetitive, and you get to learn a lot.
Yeah. I would add a final personal question to that one. If you had to convince someone, or let's say convince me to join real estate advisory, what would be your take?
Look, I cannot convince anyone, right? But how would be my take if I had to is like, if you want a nice mix of client facing, so front office, but also working with numbers, but also working with something that you can see, which is the building or the soon to be building, if it's not there yet, or the asset. It's a nice mix of everything. The numbers, the client, and then whatever you're working on, you can see it, you can visit it. You know, so a lot of the times my would be walking and my friends would be, why are you looking up? I'm like, oh, I'm just looking at the buildings, you know, because I walk, I'm like, this is new, this is old, you know, oh, I didn't see this before, you know. So you get to see it, right? So a lot of time I will be working on something, walking on the street. I'm like, oh, I work on this, you know. So it's nice.
Does it happen that like you're walking down the street and then you start evaluating the value? I think this one is like 2 million, something like that. I don't know what's the range.
I wouldn't put the number on it, but I'll be like, oh, you know, a corner, you know, a nice location. You have commercial here, you have commercial there. It's close to university. It's close to Provigo or Pharmaprix or something. Like, okay, this is better than, you know, the other thing that I was looking at. You know, it comes also from like person. I just like it.
Yeah.
Right? You have to like it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely. Yeah, it's a lot of time they're like, oh, why are you always looking up? Don't look down.
Oh, that's great. Looking up,
Yeah.
never looking down.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Chafic, for this amazing
Thank you.
episode. We covered everything about real estate advisory, your career path, and everything that you learned up until today. You made us discover a little bit about the technicalities, the approaches, the evaluation, and everything. So thank you very much for all those information.
Thanks for having me.
Being here.
Thank you.
It was amazing. Thank you, Chafic.
Thank you.